Not all predatory and evil people are scary and intimidating. Some of the most dangerous people you could come across actually are quite magnetic and charming. In today's episode, Tara and I will explore the Dark Triad personality disorder, how to recognize this type, as well as what to do if you meet someone like this. And the self-help tip will be a couple of free resources to help keep you safe. Thank you for joining us on Breaking Free from Narcissistic Abuse, where we talk about strategies, tips, and tricks on navigating and recovering from narcissistic abuse. I'm your host, Dr. Kerry McAvoy, a mental health clinician with over 20 years experience and author of Love You More, a graphic inside look at my experience of a toxic relationship.
And I'm your other host, Tara Blair-Ball, certified relationship coach, abuse survivor, and author of Reclaim and Recover, Heal from Toxic Relationships with the 7-Step Guided Journal.
We're thrilled that you're here with us today. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes, and leave us a review and let us know what you think of the show. Have you heard of the Dark Triad personality disorder? Have you heard of that before?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but you know what it is? Lately, I'm starting to see a lot of it. I wonder if you've been familiar with it or know much about it. It's fascinating. It's really scary, actually.
I know a little bit. I don't know as much as you do. Absolutely not.
Okay.
So I would love to hear you share more.
Yeah, so let's dive into that. I know, in fact, it's interesting because my old videos from a year and a half, 2 years ago are being recycled out right now on some platforms just because they've never been shown before. And one of them is about predatory behavior and about evil people. And I would say the Dark Triad personality is truly an evil person. But the ironic part is that when you meet them, you probably have never met a more attractive person in your life. They're so charming and so magnetic that they would be what I would call the siren, in the Odyssey, the siren. Yeah. So what is it? It is 3 types of personalities that are kind of housed in one person. So you have the narcissist traits, the narcissism. There's also the psychopathy or the antisocial personality disorder traits. And then you have the Machiavellian traits, which I know we don't talk much about because it's actually a reference to a book. And I think that comes out of the days if we were to go back into royal courts and we would see the way that they would handle the intrigue and the jostling for power. Mm-hmm. We would see this sort of undercutting and because of, if you think about it, if you had a king who would literally could strip you of everything you owned, but also put you to death just on a whim, and yet you also knew they could virtually improve your life, mm-hmm. There would be a lot of not good things happening in order to advance your cause and to undermine your enemies. So it's that type of a personality. It's very charming, charismatic. They're very deceitful. I think one of the best movies that showed it was Dangerous Liaison. Now, I know I'm dating myself. It was with Michelle Pfeiffer and Glenn Close. But that you can see all the intrigue that's happening between these women and around them and what's happening at the court. So do you think you've met somebody like that? Do you think you've met a Dark Triad personality before?
Okay, first off, I wanted to give a newer reference. The show Succession would absolutely be an example of that. So just for
so which one do you
want to watch?
I've been watching it. So which character do you think it would fit it? Do you know which character?
I couldn't tell you names because it's been. I think I've only seen a couple of episodes, but my husband talks to me about it all the time. But all of the court intrigue that you talked about, just like that's what jumped out to me. But absolutely, when you started describing the jostling for favor and the deception. Okay, I dated someone who would do this behavior that he called sunshining. And this is how he described it. He described it as going to people that could benefit you in some way, so going to your boss, and letting them know how they did a good job. And he was so calculated in how he would do this that every morning when he got to work, he would go on a sunshine tour where he would go and tell all these people who could benefit in some way that they were doing a great job, even if he absolutely didn't believe it, even if he didn't like the person, even that. And he tried to get me to do it with him as well, which to me, it just felt really false and uncomfortable. And why would my intention be to go tell someone else that they're doing a great job? Why would I do that? But that level it would have never jumped out at me if you had not described that sort of court intrigue that way. And this is actually the same partner who was, when we talked about in a previous episode, who told a friend of ours that he did yoga every night when he absolutely didn't do yoga. So I would guess that this guy was definitely in the Dark Triad, and I hope you rot in hell if you're listening. And goodbye.
Yeah. They're very, very dangerous. They're very dangerous. And so let me kind of describe a little bit more about their personality. The narcissism, that piece is the entitled arrogance, the confidence that they sort of like, they fill up the space and think they're all that. The psychopathy, or the antisocial personality disorder, brings in ruthless callousness, the cold-blooded persistence and determination and calculating. And there's no empathy, no remorse. There's no moral code or guilt about what they're doing. And then the Machiavellian section is the charm, the smoozing, the knowing how to really turn on, please people, to entice them, to call them into the relationship. And when I started to look into this personality style, I always thought that my ex that I got into a relationship with was, I say that he's a narcissistic sociopath. Yeah, some could argue that's a malignant narcissist. I actually think malignant narcissists are a little more destructive, more negative. They hurt people. They're just a cruel people. This type of personality is terribly hurtful, but it's all in the back end. It's all subtle. You don't know that it's happening. It's what they're doing to bring you down. So they make you think that you're their best friend. I watched my ex make relationships with people who would have thought that they were tight, that they knew him and knew each other, but they didn't know on the back end that the way he talked about them behind their backs, the way he thought they were better than them, the lies, I heard him lying to them, and that he was using them for advancements. I also watched him hunt. He literally was a predator. He would hunt for sexual conquests and set women up. We had hired a young nurse who was pregnant and married to help take care of his mother, and we were living in another country. And I watched him begin to groom her for a relationship with him. And I would even try to go whenever he would take her home because she didn't have a car. I would go on the rides a half an hour each way just to try to keep her safe. And years later, when I happened to stumble across the text messages, I found what happened to that relationship. He just ended it because he kind of moved on and things didn't work out. And she would write to him and ask him, where was he? And why did he disappear from her life? And didn't he care about what was happening in her? I mean, I saw that he was successfully grooming her for this predatory relationship. So, yeah, they're very, very toxic people, very toxic. But here's the part this is the big error I made. I thought evil was scary and, monstrous and dark and threatening. I didn't know evil could be seductive and charming and make me feel super special. I mean, yes, we have the story of the Odyssey of the siren, but I never thought, I always thought that was had to do with more with sex and seduction. I didn't realize it really was a cautionary tale of allure, of charm, that there are people who have incredibly ulterior motives, but they can appear very appealing to us.
Absolutely. I like that you talked about the entitled arrogance. I was thinking a lot just about the swagger. We might mistake arrogance for confidence. We might look up to it and think it's attractive, when in reality it comes from this gross sense of superiority.
That's one of the studies keeps showing, is that we get it. This is the thing that all of us need to be careful about, is that I don't know why we feel this way. It'd be interesting to think about why we feel this way, but we're attracted to confidence. We will pick leaders. We will pick people, put people in position of power because they act like they have it. They know it. They have the answer. I mean, think of the phenomenon around Andrew Tate. Seriously, this is somebody who's really done nothing special with his life.
No,
it's because of that swagger, that ability to project confidence even when there's no proof of competence. He's not a competent guy, but he exudes confidence. I've even watched it in groups where the people who have the most power in the group, and it's kind of fascinating to watch social dynamics. People with the most power in the group, everyone around them will start to sort of fawn and try to like get attention and approval. And yet the people at the top probably don't even have as much going for them as those who are trying to fawn and get into them and get in right with them. And what is it about? It's back to this piece of confidence. It's because of their ability to kind of have this charisma, this magnetism. And yet we don't do the critical piece of stand back and ask ourselves, what is this person really about? What is their agenda? And are they people who are able to see others in a reciprocal way? Do they authentically engage and respect other people? Are they kind? Not nice, but are they kind? And we end up then missing the fact that these people are maybe not who they seem to be. And that's the other part that kind of bothered me about my ex, is that the person I met, yeah, there was a little bleed through of warnings a little bit, but everybody who met him, nearly everybody liked him. He had the ability to project incredible likability. I mean, great charm. So that's what makes it hard, is this group of people is hard to see through. They're really hard to see through.
Yes, this particular person that I dated, very similarly, very large friend group, lots of people who loved and valued and talked him up. But when that mask started slipping as our relationship progressed and he felt, I guess, more comfortable dropping it, there was just a lot of nastiness and cruelty underneath this. I've talked previously in other episodes about some of the comments that he would make about other women's bodies. I remember him talking about an ex of his, and he would just say with a lot of disdain and contempt that she was fat. Like, she was fat and she was gross, and he didn't want to leave the lights on when they were in bed, kind of thing. Yet he still had a friendship with that ex, would see her very frequently, was nice as pie to her face. And mind you, this is the whole time while this man is exceptionally overweight. Like, you were gonna
that part before.
Yeah, like, you were gonna talk so badly about other people's bodies while not you better have still, you should never talk badly about other people's bodies. Yeah. But if you're going to attack other people's bodies, you better not be in that same place. Right. I mean, why would you do that?
Right.
But I also think too, with that swagger or confidence or leadership or etc., it made me think of work from Adam Grant, who he did a TED Talk as well as he has a book. And I found this really fascinating in terms of what we perceive as leadership or success and how you actually might get it. So he says that people in workplaces are often divided between being matchers, givers, or takers. So the people you're talking about, these Machiavellian kind of figures, those are more takers. They're trying to see what they can get or manipulate out of people. Well, those are considered the least successful individuals in the workplace. The most successful individuals are givers or matchers. So a matcher is someone, for example, of like, yeah, I'll do that report for you if you'll do this for me. Or there's, the givers of who just step in and do for others, which, for some of us that can be at our own expense. That can get to be really codependent. But really, the matchers and givers are way more successful than those takers, because that behavior starts to catch up to them,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, in fact, I saw a similar study, but it was in a different angle, that said that narcissists actually can do well at work. They can actually, because their confidence, they sort of can leave with this bravado and then be visionaries and sort of take risks that maybe people who are a little more cautious might be afraid of. Now, they struggle with relationships. They struggle following through on commitments. They burn out really quickly and get bored really quickly. So they would need help with that. Psychopathic people also, they have a piece that they can bring to the work. And that is the ability to sort of, again, take risks and do new things. But they also likely get bored, and they're not as successful as the narcissists can be. But the group that had the worst history was the Dark Triad personality, because they're just about what they can get, and they will undermine the integrity of the company. So they may often will make great first impressions, but that's really the only thing that they do that's good for the group of the company. It was a reference to what you're saying. They are so self-absorbed. One of the things that my ex would do is that we would go to the beach because we were living in Mexico on the water, and he would walk away from a day of the beach and said there was a lot of meat there. And he was talking about the other women. All they were meat. That's all. Ugh. That's all people were. They weren't. So here's the other thing that was kind of interesting that I didn't know. I just stumbled onto this when I was looking into more dark triad personality, is there is a light triad personality too. So there's the opposite, sort of the yin to the yang to them, which I had no idea. They think this person actually really exists. And they even mention a few people they think kind of embody this. And just like they're the 3 traits of narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellian, there's also 3 traits. And this person has what's called humanism, faith in humanity, and Kantism. So what those 3 are, they define them as the ability to sort of see that all humans have integrity and worth. That would be defined as the humanism. The Kantism treats people, they see people as ends to themselves. Like, in other words, they fully respect each person's rights and dignity of selfhood. And then the other thing is they tend to see the best in people and believe in the goodness of humanity. And so some of the people they think that embodies this would be Gandhi would be an example. Nelson Mandela would be another example of that. People who sort of promote the peace or the goodness of the whole. I would also say probably JFK would be another great example of that. So I thought that was intriguing that there may be this really dark side, but there's also this really light side too. And how cool is that? It makes sense though, balance, but.
So a perfect example of the dark triad and the light triad meeting would be when Andrew Tate tried to throw stuff at Greta Thunberg. Do you remember when that happened? Greta Thunberg is a perfect example of light triad. And then there you've got Andrew Tate. And then guess what? You know, he ended up getting caught by the authorities because he decided to do that stupid bravado and letting the authorities know his location because of a pizza box. But that's a perfect example. Right. That's a perfect example. And I would wonder if there is a higher likelihood of a light triad being taken advantage of a dark triad because of those soft-hearted, believing the best in others response. Yeah.
You know, my ex said his favorite quality of me was, and his command of English was kind of limited, but so he used a word that we don't typically use. He said, "You're without malice." When you think about that, what would be a dark triad's personality? Everything is laced with malice. They don't do anything for ulterior motives. They don't do anything for altruistic motives. They do everything for ulterior motives. So that's malicious. And he said that he loved that I was without malice. Now, I'm not saying I'm a light triad personality disorder, but I certainly know that he saw the opposite than himself, and that he found that. Now, he didn't find it attractive in the sense that he thought, oh, I love that about her. No, he thought, oh, goody, she's going to be easy for the picking.
You know,
in fact, that was the other thing. That was the other thing that came out about this, is that the end result, they said, in these relationships, when you discover this, you need to always run. You need to run.
Similar to you, my ex used to always say that I was nice, that everything I did was out of kindness and thoughtfulness for others. But that was, again, said not necessarily in a complimentary way, but like sort of just in an observational, factual way. Like, you don't do things to hurt people, you know, you're nice. It just was sort of like a kind of a, oh, that's weird. It's weird that you do that. That's why I'm pointing that out here. And it never really, I took it as a compliment of like, oh, because I mean, I would like to be nice just like anybody else. But looking back, I see it as another way that he would sort of tell on himself, because his actions were very much about what can I get from someone else? What can they give me? You know, when I'm sunshining, when I'm, you know, his relationships were very calculated into how could he benefit, or how could that person benefit him? Right. You know, for example, he told me once that he would never be a friend with a woman that he didn't find attractive.
Interesting. And so again, because how it looked for him, and also just because of the pleasure of being in her presence.
Correct. As well as the benefit to him in that if they fancied him at some point, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
exactly.
it was never just, these relationships are not just friendships. They're very, again, calculated and.
Yeah. And that kind of reminds me when I was looking into more of Robert Hare's work. He does a lot of research into psychopathy, that there really is 3 different roles people play, actually 4 different roles people play in a world of a psychopath. But I would also say it's true for a dark triad personality disorder. You're either a pawn, so somebody they move around on the chessboard for their purposes. They use you. I think of the lackey or the sidekick. Or you're a patron. A patron is somebody who has something, some asset like power, influence, access, money, something that you want to take advantage of that's going to move you forward, leap you forward. Or you're a patsy, and the patsy is the target. It's the person you're deliberately going to take down and use. Exactly. Not scapegoat. I tend to think of somebody you like to pick on. This is a person you're going to fleece. You're going to bilk or hurt or take something from them that they don't intend to give you. That's the person you're aiming for. You want something from. And then, of course, there's the enemies. Everybody else is an enemy, and that is just dangerous people who are dangerous to your plans. But there are no other characters in their world. So if you meet one of these people, especially even a psychopath as well, and I know I talked about the differences between narcissism and psychopath in episode 47, but if you meet a psychopath or a person with a dark triad personality, you are only one of these 4 roles. That's it. So and frankly, none of those roles to me, I would not want to be in any of those roles because they're all use based. What am I going to get out of this person? This person, back to your analogy before of an iPhone, you're just a tool. That's all you are. You're a means to them getting forward to whatever it is. Think of back on that court. How are they going to get closer to the king? Even the king is the tool. He's the patron.
Right.
How can I get one step closer so I can get as much out of this person as I possibly can?
So if you...
Toxic. It's awful.
Absolutely. So the question that I have is, let's say you can't get away from this dark triad. Not just, maybe you're at a job and they're, a coworker and you really like your job and you don't necessarily want to leave your job. And they may be trying to make you into a patsy, or they may see you as an enemy. How do you think people should distance or try to care for themselves while having to deal with this person that they should run from?
That's really tough because I grew up in pretty toxic situations with psychopathic people in my life. That was my home situation. My extended family had several psychopathic people. So I kind of grew up around that and had to navigate that kind of environment. And I tended to be the scapegoat in that situation. And there is really no great solution. I would tell most people, well, you do what you can to survive, and certainly really get good at fawning, good at hiding your own intentions. Don't be transparent. Have extremely good boundaries, but also know that you need to play the game until you, but the long game for you has to be to get out. There was really no other option. You have to get out. Because there's never going to be safety. I mean, you're not going to find a good spot in this situation. I think of like even like Breaking Bad. I mean, things just keep going bad to bad to bad. There was no good ending to that story. No. The only way out was to be as far out of it as you possibly can. So the idea that you're going to find a safe spot within it is an illusion, is a mirage. It's not going to happen. I wish there was a better solution to this, or better fix, but there isn't to this situation. These are really bad situations if you find yourself in one. And I have survived them several times. And there's just, if there could be a spot to find it, boy, as a strategist, I would have found it and done it. But, even as a kid, my thought was, when I'm 18, I'm out of here. When I'm 18, I'm out of here.
Right. Those are, I think, good, helpful tips for thinking about it. Because I think we tend to see these people not as bad as we should be. I think that's a good stark reminder, is that we really need to see them not bad. We need to have a sense that we are one of these 4 roles, and that some of these roles can really hurt us. Like if we're getting fleeced because we're the patsy, or we're constantly getting undermined, like someone sees us the enemy, or someone sees that they can sort of manipulate us and move us on the board, that we really do need to be super careful and do all that we can to remove ourselves from that relationship.
Yeah, and get more strategic in asking ourselves critical questions. Let's go back to the example that I gave about the person we hired as a help with a family member in our family, the young woman who is a nurse who was pregnant in her 20s. Here is my ex in his 50s being extremely gracious to her and interested in her job and her career and asking about her pregnancy, asking all these kind of personal fatherly-like questions. That's weird. If more discernment would have been to stand back and say, why would a 50-something-year-old man who's married and has a busy life and running a job be interested in me and doing me all these favors? What is it that he wants or plans to get from me? I think we kind of naively don't take a bigger kind of almost map-like perspective of things and ask ourselves these big questions, and we miss the malevolent intent. He had malevolent intent. I know that. It's clear when I got to see all the text messages, there was an intent. And I felt it at the time. My gut was saying, she's at risk. She's at great risk here. But it's easy when we just think people are being nice. And they, I even get criticism when I put this content out elsewhere. You're like, oh, you just like to imagine the bad things about. No, I've actually seen the bad things that bad people can do. And I know what the grooming looks like. This is grooming. So I think if we just get more discerning and maybe a little, I hate to say it, a little more paranoid, we could better protect ourselves from this type of people.
I think, too, what we talked about in the previous episode or a couple episodes about the sort of the fluidity of sense of self. So, for example, when my ex at the time was telling me and explaining to me about sunshining and telling me that I needed to go on a sunshine tour because it would help me or benefit me in some way. He was literally showing me how he viewed the world, how he viewed his situation, how he viewed how to step up, how to, work with our patrons, basically.
Yeah.
If someone is, and I took that to mean, oh, this is just how corporate life is like. This is how you navigate, work politics, etc., how you network. I took it as my naivety that I didn't know it was like that. What I actually should have recognized was this is how he views relationships instead. Yes. And this is behavior that I very likely have seen done, that has been done to me, that he has done to others, that's a way to view relationships.
Exactly.
Because I think it's very important to see people's behavior as not just compartmentalized. If someone sunshines or whatever, or sees people at work a certain way and acts a certain way, it's not just compartmentalized to work. It's also going to show up in every other part of the relationship, in other relationships. And I think we need to see it that way of, oh, this is an indicator of how he sees everything else versus, oh, it's just a work thing or that's how it is or,
Right, exactly. Like that's the same error you make. Like, oh yeah, he cheated with me to get in this relationship, but he won't cheat on me. What? Well, yeah, of course he's going to. Oh, he sunshines them, but he's not going to sunshine me. Well, no, he sunshines everybody. He's going to shun. You're right. We sort of make ourselves the exception to the rules, which kind of takes me nicely into the self-help tip for today. And that is, we're talking about discernment, how to assess for this. And so I don't really so much have an exercise, but I'd like to point people to some aids, some help. So if you're worried about your relationship, that maybe you're in a relationship with somebody who might be narcissistic or worse, dangerous, I have a free assessment that you can take that would help you identify, is this just narcissism or is this psychopathy, or do you have somebody who has a combination of both? And it's going to be in the show notes below. So if that's something you're concerned about, definitely check out. And the other thing we didn't mention, but I said the best thing to do is run. But you can't just run because these people are highly paranoid. So they tend to anticipate people leaving and they tend to be very good at trapping us. So I have an exit strategy checklist that I'm also giving away for free for things you're going to be aware of or be plan ahead, like having a plan of where to go, what you're going to do, sort of having set aside luggage in case that you need to grab something on the go, knowing where your critical documents are, having copies of that, those types of things. So if you need help with both of those, then you can check out the survey as well as the exit checklist.
I think those are so great, Kerry, and I think it's so necessary. I think too often when we're leaving, even if we know that the relationship is toxic, abusive, narcissistic, psychopathic, potentially part of this dark triad, even though if we know that the romantic relationship with this person had been awful, very dysfunctional, unhealthy, I think we always, I don't know what term I would want to use, naively or, optimistically believe that leaving is going to be not as bad as it very likely will be. I think we underestimate how bad it might be. And I do think the majority of us leaving those relationships do absolutely need a game plan, some kind of plan for how are we going to make sure we get all of the stuff that we need to do, where are we going to go? Because the other person is not going to make it easy for us at all, because then they lose that power and control over us. And that's their desire, that's their intention. If we're, a pawn or whatever it might be, however they view us, they're not going to make it easy. And we have to remember that.
Exactly.
Were you as fascinated today as I was in discussing individuals who might meet the Dark Triad criteria? And did it make you think that any of your current or former relationships may have those qualities? You can let us know by emailing us at hello@breakingfreewithkerryandtara.com. And please make sure to check out Kerry's resources for assessing your partner's narcissistic or psychopathic characteristics and how to set up an exit plan. If you haven't yet, make sure you follow or subscribe, write us a review, and if you know someone who would benefit from this episode, make sure to share it with them. If you're not following us on social media yet, you can check me out at tara.relationshipcoach and Kerry at Kerry McAvoy, PhD. We will see you back here next Monday, where we'll be talking about how to best prepare for the stages when leaving a toxic relationship.